All right. Welcome to another amazing podcast. I am your host, Gerald, and we are going to talk about letting go of your trauma. And that's really important. I think a lot of times, a lot of things are stopping us from getting to the next level in our lives. And most of the time, it's our trauma. So we're going to talk about today, how is it, Gerald, that I can let go? What is the science of my mindset? How is it that I constantly remember these traumas and these pains and these hurts? Why is this constantly coming up for me? So today we're going to talk about four key elements. I want to go to my notes here. I want to make the most value of our time. The science and memory of why the trauma keeps coming up, exploring the concepts of letting it go, embracing freedoms, and understanding how is it that works? How does all these little moving parts create a safe space for me to let go? And we're going to unpack that, okay? So the first concept, the first idea of letting go of your past is finding out, how do I even continue to remember this constantly? How is it that my past traumas continue to enter into the mindset of my life and continue to dominate every aspect of my thinking? How is that even possible? Well, I'll tell you how it's possible. It's simply science. And I tell you science as in not as in algebra or getting something in the beaker. I mean, the science of your mindset. How does the human brain work? We all have experiences, and unfortunately, some of those experiences are traumatic experiences, right? So we're talking about that today, our trauma. So our minds remember that moment of trauma, right? And it's stored up in our brains as as memory. I apologize. Okay. So first we have the experience, then it becomes a memory. Then that memory, now we access as a thought. I'll say it again, the experience of the trauma, the memory of the trauma, and then recalling that experience back into your recollection or your present day moment, right? So think about this. Do you think it would be very difficult for you to let something go or for something to go away if every day you saw it, if every day it kept coming up, if every day it kept presenting itself? That's what holding on to trauma looks like. It looks like every day, at some part of the day, you're going back into that moment in time. You're going back to that. You're going back to that moment in time and you're saying, I'm going to remember that moment now, right? I'm going to go back. I'm going to stop my present day. Can you imagine how often we ruin the present moment by going back and recalling a past moment, the recollection of the trauma? How many moments we don't allow to have their own grace, their own beauty, because we keep going back to the memory of that moment, right? So write this down. The first step for me to let go of my trauma is understanding that I keep thinking about the trauma. And if I can get a hold of that thought as it comes, meaning if I've been sexually assaulted, if I've been abused as a child, if I had a abusive marriage, abusive wife, if I was neglected as a child, if I could see that thought as it comes, and I don't play with it, I don't go back and sit and sit at the doorstep of misery and say, let's go and talk about it with myself. No, you let that thought die down, right? So letting go involves you letting something just sit there and not allowing it to breathe and have space and room into your life, so you don't allow it to grow. Whatever you don't nurture, it dies. So if you don't take a thought and start to develop more into the energy and say, oh yeah, I remember that time and woe is me, and oh, I'm so hurt, I was so hurt then, and well, that's the thing about letting go. Why are you still hurt now? That's the question, right? Of letting go. How can you let go if you're still bringing it in from the past and then feeling that way right now? There's no way you can let that go. So let's cement that. Letting go involves foundationally realizing that I keep bringing it up, okay? So what's the second step? Let's look at that. Where's my notes here? All right. The second step is, what are some techniques? What are some tools? What are some strategies that I could use to maybe start taking control of my thought process so I don't have to go back to that traumatic moment throughout the day and recall it over and over and over again? No, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to be mindful. Oh, here it goes. Here's the second one, right? Tools and techniques on letting go of your past trauma. Let's be mindful that I think about my trauma throughout the day. Wow. See, it gets interesting when you watch what you think about. Write that down. Watch what I think about. That's a good one, right? Watching what I think about, right? Being mindful. That is a great, simple tool for you to use to realize when you're going back into your past traumatic moment and bringing it into the future and saying, I choose to feel horrible today because I want to go back and remember my past. How awful, right? But you don't know you're doing that throughout the day if you're not practicing being mindful about what you're thinking about. Am I watching what I think about? What am I thinking about throughout the day? Because if I feel sad, if I feel depressed, guess what's probably happening? I'm thinking about some sad stuff, right? Absolutely. Okay. So being mindful of what it is that you're thinking about. Setting time to quiet the mind. Letting go requires quieting the mind, but you can't quiet the mind if you're still in chaos, right? You have to find a safe space, a quiet space, right? For you to just simmer down throughout the day. That is going to be very important with you letting go of anything. Is finding the space to do that, right? You deserve a quiet space, quiet time throughout your day. So write these steps down, these techniques, right? This is the second thing you're going to use, these techniques and tools. Being mindful of what I think about and also creating space for quiet so I can watch what I'm thinking about. 5-10 minutes out the day when you're in the car, when you're in the bathroom, when you're chopping up some stuff for the kids for dinner. There's so many moments that you can practice watching what you're thinking about. But when you haven't been taught these techniques, how would you know, right? So number three, embracing letting go, embracing the other side of your trauma. You know how I look at trauma? Traumas are wounds, are triggers. That's trigger. That's different. Well, I'll go back to this. Triggers or traumas. When someone is triggered, right? It's because they have a traumatic instance that hasn't been healed, right? So understand this. The reason why your trauma is still there the triggering is still there is because the trauma is still there, right? So if you don't want to be triggered by your traumas, you got to let them go. But you can't let them go if you're not practicing mindfulness, if you're not practicing watching your thoughts, if you're not creating a safe space for you to figure out, what am I thinking about all day long? Am I constantly going back to the day I was sexually assaulted, I was abused, I was what are you going back? How often am I doing that throughout the day? And is that causing this spiral effect to where I don't feel good? I'm overeating, I'm sad, I feel depressed. What is not letting go of your trauma costing you? Is it costing you your health? Is it costing you your sleep at night? Is it costing you bad relationships with your wife, with your husband, with your kids because you're angry, you're bitter, you're short? Why? Because your mind is stuck in that traumatic moment and it keeps recalling it. And you don't know it. You're not watching it because you're going throughout your day, not realizing that every 2-3 hours, every 4 to 6 hours, you're going back into that memory of that moment of that traumatic instance and you're pulling it back and saying, I want to think about that. That's not helping, right? So looking at the foundation principles of how my mind works. Okay, the reason why the traumas are there is because my memory's there. It won't forget. Okay, cool. But I can see what's going on throughout the day. I can create a space in my mind where I can watch my thoughts, and this will allow you to start letting go of the trauma. But again, you can't let go of something that you keep dragging along with you. You can't let the trauma go if you keep recalling the memory every day. So if we can get a control of that thought process, those thought patterns, and say, well, do I need to think about that? And here's the last key. Write this down. This is number 4. Replacing the traumatic thoughts with something beautiful, like the last amazing moment that you've had, right? With your wife, with your husband, with your kids, with your job. When you are thinking about that moment where something sad happened, when you start to go there, replace that thought with the most magical thing that has ever happened to you. Because just like you can think of something awful and traumatic that has happened to you in your life, watch this. I guarantee you can think about something just as amazing that has happened to you in your life. And if you can't, for the life of you, think of something that amazing that has happened to you, I'll give you one good thing right now. You can write this down, everyone, because everyone has had this happen to them, okay? If you can't think of anything when that traumatic moment happens that has ever happened to you, you can think of this, okay? You can think of, thank God I'm alive and I have the opportunity to be a human being and have this human experience. Whenever you want to go back to that moment, just thank God that you're here and you're blessed and you're here to share the next moment, the next breath, so on and so forth. If when those moments happen, go there, go higher. When your mind wants to go to the trauma, let's go to a happier space of, well, thank God I'm alive. Thank God they didn't kill me. Thank God I still recovered. Thank God I'm on the other side. Thank the universe this isn't happening to me right now. My kids are healthy. My wife is healthy. There's something that you can go to when you want to be in your traumatic moment that you can utilize to push right past that trauma. Absolutely. But again, if you don't have the tools, the techniques, and strategies, how would you know? Okay. So this, I hope, helps you, adds value. Like, subscribe to the podcast, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Obviously, we're everywhere. So definitely utilize some of these tools. Realize what the mind is doing, understand how it works, set aside some safe space for you to look at your thoughts, watching your thoughts. And when you see what's going on, replace it with something beautiful, replace it with something that is more energetically aligned with what you want to feel. Okay. All right. This has been another amazing episode of Spiritual Talks. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and we will see you on the next episode.